What's up, everybody? March Madness is here, finally. But unfortunately, there will be no Big Five teams in it, as we learned this past weekend. And we're going to get into everything that involves with that. But first, I'm your co-host, Kyle Morello. That is Jake Copestick. This is episode number 33. Cope, how we doing?
March. We're going to have some games on today. By the time we get off and we sign off today, Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, and SEMO are going to be playing. And then we have a playing game tonight with Pittsburgh and Mississippi State. So we're here. We are officially going to enter phase 4 of the season and the last phase of the season. I couldn't be doing any better. It's my favorite time of the year. I'm loving every minute of it. Can't wait to watch some basketball tonight. So March Madness basketball, to be more specific. So I am doing great. This is my favorite time of the year, and I am loving every single second of it.
Oh, me too. Listen, I know this is what you live for. I live for a few things, and this is absolutely one of them. I'm ecstatic. This is the best few weeks of the year. Obviously the week leading up to it that we just had was incredible, and that's all part of it as well. But once the games actually count for the tournaments and that drama all unfolds, there's nothing better. So we're gonna get right into it. But first, we're gonna talk about a little bit of Big Five stuff too, because we did have a couple games of the weekend. We did have some news come in the last few days, so we're gonna get into all of that. First things first, and this is brutal to talk about: Cincinnati beating Temple in the American quarterfinals on Friday, 84-54. It was an ugly one. It was as ugly as it sounds. Damian Dunn, Zach Hicks, Jamil Reynolds all combining for 36 points, 12 each. They only shot 32.8% from the field. They shot 25% from three. They had 15 turnovers to Cincy's 7. And there was some fallout from this. Arthur Johnson, after the game, was not committal on Aaron McKie's future, and we learned on Monday that non-committal turned into an exit for Aaron McKie. He is no longer Temple's head coach. After 4 seasons, a 52-56 record, 0 American wins in the American Conference Tournament, unfortunately. Very, very sad because I had a lot of hopes for him coming in, and I'm sure you did too, and I know I'll let you get into it in a second. But on top of that, Caleb Battle, kind of as we all expected, entering the transfer portal. I think he might get some looks. I don't know from exactly who, but we'll see. Obviously, he was, our leading scorer for the last 2 years. As you tweeted out, albeit only in 7 games in the 2021 season, 2021-22 season. And Jamil Reynolds also entering the transfer portal, even though he just got here. I feel like he didn't really get his feet wet here in Philly, but 1 year and he's out already. He'll definitely get some high major looks as well, I think, but this is just spiraling out of control real fast for the Owls. I'll let you get to the game first, and then, I'll let you transition into the departures that we have. But what do you think of all of this that's going on?
Yeah, so it's a lot because this isn't just a game we're reviewing. We need to talk about a new coach. We need to talk about getting new players in here. But this was a rough game, and I think if this was a closer game, maybe McKie stays. But when you see a game like this, and we talked about in our game preview, he had not won a game in the AAC tournament, and then to go out like this with a blowout loss to a team that you just pushed to overtime at Cincinnati, I like it. I guess it makes a little bit more sense. They started off hot. They were up double digits. I think they were up 17-6 in this game. And then Cincinnati answered with a run and just kind of never looked back. Shooting was rough. They didn't get a good game from Hysier Miller, unfortunately. 1 for 5 from the 3-point line, only 2 of 12 overall from the field. And with Caleb Battle being out, he's a guy that had to pick up the slack for sure. It just didn't happen in this game. Big Jordan was held scoreless. And, just as a whole, offensively, it wasn't there. But they started out with some good energy defensively. The first couple possessions felt like Cincinnati couldn't even get the ball inside the perimeter. But after that, when Cincinnati entered back with their run and this game kind of got out of control, it just wasn't pretty on both ends. So I'll go to the coaching change now. I don't really know if this is good. I think there's problems beyond just the leadership here and the head coach. The program doesn't really have much interest. This is a program, as we know, top 5 in wins. Now Syracuse is catching up to them. They've also made a coaching change with Jim Boeheim stepping down. But I think the problems go farther just beyond the leadership there. However, it's 52-56 overall. No wins in the AAC tournament. This was his best team. He had his guys. Now, there is some injuries. The whole Caleb Battle situation certainly didn't help when your top guy is stepping away from the team and causing problems off the court. But This was supposed to be his best team, and they got off to a good. They had some bad losses, they had some good wins. They beat Rutgers, who got subbed from the tournament. I thought they beat Villanova on their home court when they were ranked. They lose to Maryland Eastern Shore. They lose to Wagner. There was no consistency here. And I think that's what ended up making Arthur Johnson make that decision. Also, you mentioned how he was so non-committal about McKie after the game when he said, literally at halftime during the game, "We're going to evaluate everything after the season." That does not sound right. When I heard that, I said, "Yeah, he's done. He's done." If he thought he was going to bring back McKie for another season, he would have mentioned that he had confidence in him and said something about bringing him back. The fact that he said we're going to evaluate everything after the season, to me, that was kind of the death knell there, and that's how I kind of figured he would be gone. So, speaking about potential replacement, I've seen one guy pop up, and I believe this is the only guy that I would ask to take the job, is Matt Lango from Colgate. He has dominated at Colgate the last couple of years. Now, it's a tough job to win at. Obviously, being in the Patriot League, you're a small league, there's academic requirements. It's a hard job for just about anybody. Lehigh, Army, Navy, like there's schools here that have academic requirements for sure. But he's been there for 12 seasons. He's won almost 54% of his games. 5 straight regular season championships. They're going to play Texas in the NCAA tournament. That will be his 4th NCAA tournament appearance in the last 5 seasons. 3-time Patriot League Coach of the Year. Great X's and O's coach. They always have a really good offense. This year, number 1 in effective field goal percentage, and due to a kind of mid to late season slide from Utah State, who was really good at shooting the 3-ball, they currently have the best 3-point shooting percentage-wise in America right now. So their offense is always humming. I think he's a guy that could come in here, great basketball mind, really good X's and O's, would immediately, now it would probably take him a couple years to get his guys in here. But when things get going, if Matt Lango comes here, and I believe he will be the guy that they really target and try to get to come to Temple, their offense will be awesome. It'll be humming. But now, speaking to the players, it's just kind of good for both sides. I think the Caleb battle's leaving. Now, I think when you look at his off-the-court stuff, two separate times where he had run-ins with the coaching staff, leaves the team late in the year, came off the bench after averaging almost 22 points a game last year. Just doesn't seem like a good look to me. And if there's going to be problems, he's going to be on his 3rd school now because he left Butler after a year to come to Temple. He's going to be on his 3rd school now. So if he's going to continue to be like a locker room problem, so to speak, I don't think this is going to work at a Power 5 school. I get you see the gaudy numbers. I don't think he's going to go to a Power 5 school. He's from North Jersey. I think what ends up happening with Caleb Battle is maybe transfers down. I saw somebody on Twitter, a Rhode Island fan page, say that could be a guy that they could use. But at the same time, Rhode Island just dismissed Breon Freeman this year. Clearly, they've shown even in year 1 that coaching staff, they will dismiss you if there's problems there. So what I think Caleb Battle does is, I don't think he's going to transfer up to a Power 5 school with a tenured head coach that's going to allow him to gun like he did at Temple. But that's because Temple needed somebody to provide offense for him. I think he transfers down to a school that's probably in the Northeast at a level where he can get his own, where he can be the focal point and he can be the main scorer on a team. That's personally what I think what happens with Caleb Battle. Now, Jamil Reynolds, I like what you said. He barely got his feet wet here. I was really, really high on him coming here. I loved the addition of him, but the injury that he had didn't help because it just felt like he never kind of got off the ground. Showed you some really good stuff, and he just couldn't consistently prove that with his injury. And then he had to come back, and he came off the bench due to that hand injury. But I think he's going to be really sought after. A lot of people are going to go after him. I think he's a guy that could play high major. And the thing is, I'm disappointed to see him go because not only did I like what he showed this year, but he was a guy that as a junior and a senior, I thought really could contribute to Temple and be a dominant everyday starter at the center position for him. So a lot going on here. I think Matt Langle's the guy overall that leads the charge here now. The Notre Dame job's open. I hear Chris Holtman could maybe take that job. Micah Shrewsbury can maybe take that job. But here's the problem, Kyle. Like I said, I think the problem is beyond just the leadership of the head coach. How desirable of a job is this? The AAC is losing its powers. Houston's gone. Cincinnati's gone, who was getting better, was the 4th overall seed in the AAC tournament. UCF's going. And you have all these small schools that are coming in. I don't know how desirable of a job this is. Like, I really hope Matt Langle comes here because if not, I don't even know who you get here. So I really think he's the guy. He played at Penn under Fran Dunphy. He was an assistant at Temple under Fran Dunphy for a while. If you're talking about a guy with Philly ties, which you have to have in the city, I think Matt Langle's your guy, and they need to make a push at him because I don't know who else can right the ship here if it's not him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very loaded situation with Temple here. I mean, like you said, like I think Reynolds would have been a mainstay, a cog in our lineup for a few years, and definitely sucks to see him go. And obviously, sucks to see Battle go too, because just the talent's there. I wish it would have worked out with him. Unfortunately, he had the injury last year, and then this year with all the problems and stuff, it's just unfortunate. There was so much potential with this team, and it just didn't get there. And I think that's why Arthur Johnson made the move to go. But like you said, it's more than just leadership. Like you mentioned, this is a program that's fifth all time in wins. Like this is used to be one of the creams of the crops of the NCAA for men's basketball. And, you know, in the last 10 or so years, it really, really hasn't been that. And we've kind of been reduced to a mid-major team. And it's awful to see because that's not what we were for the longest time. And I know that Temple was in the A10 for all those years, and the A10, as they're a good conference for basketball, but like not, like the Big East or anything. But still, Temple was a power, especially under John Chaney. And Fran Dunphy had some great years too. It's just unfortunate, kind of toward the end of Dunphy's tenure and now with McKie tenure. It's been a while since Temple's had some really good basketball. So I don't know how attractive of a job it is right now, especially, you mentioned Notre Dame is open, St. John's is open, Georgetown is open. Penn State could be open, if he goes to Notre Dame or whatever. So there's the coaching carousel is going to be big this year. And unfortunately, Temple's in it when there's some national powers that are also hoping to get back to that relevancy. So I don't know. I think Matt Lang was the guy. I've heard Mark Turgeon's name. He also has Philly ties. I know you don't like Mark Turgeon, but I don't think it would be the worst option in the world, but I definitely don't think he's a great option. But other than that, like, I've seen Dawn Staley's name floated on Twitter, but she's not coming here, guys. Like,
Nope.
I absolutely wish to obviously, coach the Temple. But she's not leaving South Carolina. That's the best team in women's basketball right now.
Yeah.
She's not leaving. She's
And I don't
got a lot going on for her.
I don't want to cut you off here, but another thing about Dawn Staley is the reason she won't leave. It goes beyond that she's the highest paid women's basketball coach in college history. It goes beyond the success she's had, how good South Carolina is. She is an ally and she is somebody that wants to build up women's basketball, and she would never leave for a
Yeah,
men's job if she plans on doing like it goes. It's a fun idea, I guess, to throw out. It would never happen because her even more than being a college basketball coach, she wants to be somebody that gets women's that increases its popularity, increases its viewership. Like it goes far beyond just how good she is in
100%.
South Carolina.
100%. And, a devil's advocate to that would be, oh, well, she would be a Trailblazers being the first women's coach in men's basketball. That is true. And that would be an incredible accomplishment. And I think sometime soon that will happen. I think it almost happened this was more so in the NBA, but Becky Hammon, obviously, was Spurs assistant, was looking around at jobs there. Probably could have coached in college too. She opted to go to the Aces, and they're phenomenal. But she's also another one who's trying to build up the women's game, and it
Yeah.
absolutely should be. Like, and Dawn Staley's the same way, and it would be silly for her to leave, and it would be against what she's for. As much as I would love it, and as much as you would love it, and the entire Temple fan base would love it, it's just not happening. Another one that I would love that I think is probably unrealistic is Steve Donahue. I mean, just because he has the Philly ties, and I think he's a great coach. It would be exciting to see what he would do with not just Ivy League talent when there's not as much, academic requirements, but he's not leaving Penn, I don't think either. He's
No.
built something great there too.
I
So,
mean, hey, it wouldn't be the first time Temple got a coach from Penn.
well, that's what I'm saying. That's
Yeah,
what I'm saying. It
wouldn't be
wouldn't
the
be the
first
first
time it
time.
happened.
And in the same breath, now not as much, but Dunphy was a legend at Penn before he came over to Temple, obviously. And Donahue's been a great coach for Penn too, but I just don't see it at this stage. I think the job is a lot more attractive when Dunphy took it over than when Donahue, for right now. So I think it's Langle or bust for Temple, but it's going to be an interesting offseason for the Owls, so we'll see there. Speaking of Steve Donahue and those Quakers, though, unfortunately their season came to an end as well on Saturday. A game that we both had the pleasure of covering. Princeton beating Penn, of course, 77-70. Jordan Dingle, 19 points in that one, 9 of 18. Clark Slackard, 17 points on 6 of 13. Nick Spinoso, 15 points, 6 of 15. Had 5 of Penn's 9 turnovers, unfortunately, including the one questionable call at the end, which we can get into a little bit. I don't like questioning officiating too much, but I think that was not the best call in the world on the offensive foul there with 30-something seconds left. But it wasn't just that. They had 21 fouls in this one. Princeton only had 12, which caused them to shoot more free throws. They were out rebounded 42-34, including 15-10 on the offensive end. And Princeton only had 1 turnover in the second half after having 8 in the first half. So just a frustrating one, because it was another game where they led for a while and they didn't close it out and they didn't get it done. And it's unfortunate, because I do think that they could have beaten Yale just like Princeton beat Yale. Obviously, a few weeks ago they did do so. It's just the monkey they have to get off their back soon. They haven't beaten Princeton very much in the last handful of years. So an unfortunate way to end the season for the Quakers here.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing was, this was a great college basketball game. It was. Me and you, we were in the media section right on the baseline. It was awesome. It was a great atmosphere. First time we had both been to Jadwin Gymnasium. I'd said it reminded me of like a knockoff Carrier Dome almost.
Yeah,
It was the way they had the court set up. But it was an awesome college basketball game. There was a lot of people there. It was a great atmosphere, and it was back and forth. And they played as good. They really did everything that you could have asked of them. I can't really point to any mistakes, because the thing is, like, Jordan Dingle is obviously great scoring the ball, but we were at the post game presser, and Steve Donahue really seemed like he wanted to laud him for his defense even more. Like, this was just a really, really good game. Caden Pierce, which, by the way, the freshman, he had a double-double in the championship game against Yale, and he had a double-double all 3 times that he had to play against Penn. Knocking down shots and the biggest thing was grabbing rebounds, because when Penn needed to get a stop and they needed to get the ball back with under a minute left, I think there was a timeout called or a stop with about 53 seconds left. They got a couple offensive rebounds that helped them burn the clock to the point where Penn got the ball and there's about 20 seconds left. And I think it might have shifted their strategy, as opposed to, hey, if we have 40 seconds left, let's try and get a quick 2. And then we can foul, as opposed to, well, there's only 20 seconds left. Why don't we try and get a 3? So it was a couple rebounds at the end that killed him. Clark Slackard had a really good game. He had struggled a little bit in the 2 games against Princeton before, but played very, very well in this one. The problem was here, they didn't get any scoring. I believe Max Martin lead 2 points in this game. And he was a really, really key contributor for them. Scored in double digits, had some games where he got close to 20. He was huge for them. And to not have a guy who scored the ball as well as he did down the stretch of the season when they got hot show up here was tough. I guess I'll get to the call at the end. There's just something that doesn't sit right with me. When you have Keyshawn Kelman, who, if you look at him, he's big and he's built. That is a strong, strong dude. Something doesn't sit right with me when the biggest guy on the court is taking a charge, not at the basket, and takes it like in the middle of the lane while Nick Spinoso is trying to do a spin. I thought it was a bad call. I thought it was a bailout. Obviously, don't really like to talk to the officials, but there's just something about that doesn't sit right with me. It's like he really didn't even try to play defense. He just saw he was going to spin and just kind of plopped like a fish out of the water. So, hate to talk about the officiating, but I do think it was a bad call. I just hate to see games decided on that, because, again, he's the biggest guy on the court.
I also think he was still moving.
Yeah, I didn't think he was still either. That's a good point to bring up. And, Spinoso's a big guy. He's not that strong to knock over a big guy like Keyshawn Kelman. Like, he just ran into him. He had a couple steps from the perimeter, and that was it. So that wasn't what decided the game here. It was a close game, but you look at some offensive rebounds late, and they had a couple second chance points in the second half right in front of where we were sitting. That's kind of what it comes down to. They played a good game. Lucas Monroe, unfortunately, his Penn career is going to come to an end, but he and Jonah Charles, who are seniors, announced about a month ago or so that they were going to use their COVID year somewhere else because they can't play 5 years in the Ivy League. So I thought Lucas Monroe had a really, really good game. George Smith hit some shots, had to play a lot of defense on Tosan, who, And it really doesn't matter who you put in front of him. I mean, Dak he's just a hell of a player, and I'm excited to kind of see what they do when they have to play Arizona here in the tournament. But good game all around. Unfortunately, just couldn't get it done at Princeton. And Mitch Henderson just kind of owned them. I hate to say that, but you look at the record and it speaks for itself. Mitch Henderson, as long as he's been the coach at Princeton, I mean, he's just had Penn's number. So they end up winning this one. They obviously beat Yale the day after on Sunday at noon, and now they're going dancing. So that was a good game. This is a good game for both sides. Very, very good game. There was familiarity. This is the third time they played, the second time in a week. The Quakers unfortunately couldn't get it done. And point to what you were saying before, kind of throwing Steve Donahue's name out for the Temple job, sounded very, very excited to hit the ground running and to kind of run it back with their top 5 scorers coming back from the season's team. So he's got a lot of returners. Like I said, their top 5 scorers. Unfortunately, no Lucas Monroe, which is going to hurt them a lot because he's a glue guy that just did the dirty work, anything that it took to win. But they have a lot of guys returning, and Steve Donahue seemed very excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps when you have the Ivy League Player of the Year, Jordan Dingle, coming back. And obviously Clark Slacker, too. And they have a whole bunch of guys coming back. So it's going to be a great year next year for Penn, too. I'm very excited. I think they'll be back in the Ivy League tournament. I'm not 100% sure where it's hosted next year. I don't know if you know. But I'll have to look that up. But they're I think they're going to be back there. It's looking okay for Penn next year, to say the least.
Absolutely.
One person who won't be returning, also, we forgot to mention, was Max Lorca-Lloyd. He will also be in the transfer portal. But I believe he's a grad transfer, correct?
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, so he's using
has no more eligibility.
his extra year.
Yeah. So,
but as far as the center front goes, and not to cut you off,
no,
we'll see if there's, I'll have to look deeper in their recruiting if they have anybody coming in. But besides Spinoza, like, you're also going to lose Michael Moshkovitz, who could play. He played sparingly down the stretch. When they did play him, they would kind of go small a little bit. You don't have him. Chris Ubochi, who was a freshman this year, I believe he had to sit. I think it was for academics or some off-the-court stuff. But maybe that's a guy that can step in. But regardless, you now have a backup center hole that you got to fill if it's not going to be Chris Ubochi. So definitely they'll miss him. They'll miss his defense and his rim protection. And maybe that's something that Ubochi can slide into. But if not, we'll have to see if they can get another center on the recruiting trail, perhaps a transfer, because that transfer portal is lighting up already, and it's not even close to what it's going to be when the season ends. So there'll be plenty of guys out there, but we'll have to see because now they have a hole in the backup center slot.
Yeah, I mean, you put me onto the Verbal Commits Twitter page. I follow them and put the notifications on, and it's just lighting up over the last few days. There is. I think it was Jeff Goodman tweeted out that there was a record yesterday of 173 players entering the first day, which is nuts. And there's been a bunch more today. Obviously, Jamil Reynolds and Caleb Battle were 2 of those. One of them yesterday on one of the teams that didn't play this past weekend was Deshaun Shepard, who, put his name in the transfer portal that he's going to be leaving LaSalle. So that's also a pretty big loss for the Explorers. Really athletic guy. Definitely had some years ahead of him. I thought he could have been one of the core pieces of the Explorers going forward, but greener pastures that he seeks. And I don't think the grass is always greener on the other side, but he might be going somewhere, or might be considering going somewhere that he thinks is better than the Explorers. But what did you think of that real quick before we move on?
Yeah, I was disappointed by it, and not that that's anything personal, just from like a team perspective, because he got better as the season went on. When he started to play a lot more, he took advantage of his minutes. He can knock down some threes, great slasher, very athletic, do down some dunks in transition, but he's a terrific rebounder for them too. And when they had to play small, and Ducore had some games where he didn't play a ton of minutes, and Brokaus went down for a couple of games where him being a true freshman having to play, it allowed them to play small a little bit. Or if they were going to play a small lineup with the Drame brothers because of his rebounding. And I'm right with you. I really thought he was going to be a building block for this LaSalle team, and I was really excited to see what he could do with a full season, knowing he would play. So hopefully he comes back. Like you said, sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Think of how many players are going to enter the transfer portal this year. There's not enough spots. Sometimes guys move down, they go down to D2. Some guys take the JUCO route. Sometimes there's just not space. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes because he didn't play a ton even last year, but he showed you what he could do when he got minutes, and he played very, very well for LaSalle. And I was really hoping he'd stick around. So maybe there's a glimmer of hope that he could stay, but we'll have to see where he ends up. We'll update you when we find out. But regardless, we wish him the best because he really showed how how good of a player he could be when he got some playing time this year.
Yeah, 100%. And, just I'm sure most of you probably know, but just if you're watching this in case you don't know, just because you enter the transfer portal doesn't mean you have to leave the school you're currently at. You can always go back. So there's a chance that he can come back. There's also a chance that any of these guys, except for the ones from Penn who are grad transfers, any of those can come back. Now, obviously with Caleb Battle, I don't think there's any shot he's coming back. Technically he could, but he won't. I think probably same with Jamil Reynolds. But just that little footnote that you don't have to transfer if you put your name in the transfer portal. So maybe Deshaun Shepard could come back. And you mentioned, best of luck to him. I just want to say best of luck to all these transfers and Coach McKie as well, specifically too. Thank you for your time. Thank you for helping Big Five basketball. As fans, media too. Obviously, we love the contributions, even however long or short they were. So definitely thank you for that. And one final thing before we move on, I did look it up. The 2024 Ivy League tournament is in New York at Columbia. So that is where that will be next year. Hopefully we will be there as well, because that'll definitely be a very cool atmosphere. Plus, there's some other conference tournaments in the Big Apple that we might have to hit. So
Correct. Make a weekend out of it.
Absolutely. We'll have to see what happens about 350 something days from now. So
that's probably going to be like an actual neutral court, because if Columbia has the season they did this year, they will not be playing in the Ivy League.
No. I very much expect at least the three of the same teams, if you say Penn, Princeton, and Yale, to be in it again. Harvard's always pretty good too. Cornell was good this year. Brown was right in the bubble. So we'll see what happens. But all right, Cope, here we go. The brackets are here. I've got mine right in front of me. I'm gonna flip it this way so nobody sees anything. Because I don't want to mention anything yet. Yes. We have brackets in front of us. Oh my God. I filled mine out on Sunday night. I always do it the night of, but I think I definitely took a little bit more time this time. I think it took about 2 hours to fill it out, doing all the research and stuff. Definitely got distracted maybe once or twice, but it's important. It's important to do some research. Obviously people have done a lot better than the both of us having done no research, and it will happen again. That's just the nature of March, but here we go. All right, so here's how we're going to do this. We're going to give around 2 to 3 matchups, maybe one more each that we like in the first round coming up here. Then we're going to give our final 4, and we're going to give our national champions. So, Copestick, you have the floor. Give me a few games you like here in the round of 64.
Okay, so 3 games I like. I'll give you my upset, and then I'll go one that's a potential upset that I think a lot of suckers are going to be on. I'll give my upset, and then I'll give another a 6-11 game. So first game I like, San Diego State and Charleston. I've watched San Diego State a lot. I've absolutely destroyed my sleep schedule in the process, staying up watching Mountain West basketball. The tip-offs at 11, the tip-offs at 11:30, the tip-offs at midnight sometimes. Absolutely destroyed my sleep schedule. But the thing is, I'm a big Brian Dutcher fan. The guy's done a great job in San Diego State filling in for Steve Fisher after he retired. And this is a really, really good program, one of the best on the West Coast. They had a good non-conference slate. They had the place at Stanford, BYU. They went to Maui, Ohio State, blew it at Arkansas, should have beat Arkansas, played Arizona, didn't win. Maybe they see them again in the bracket. You never know. But I really like the San Diego State team. Last year, it was the offense. It was Matt Bradley like carrying a boulder on her shoulders at times because they didn't have anybody else that could score. They bring in Darian Trammell from Seattle, who was the WAC Defensive Player of the Year. He's a lightning rod. He's a great defender, great on-ball defender, which will be good having to defend Ryan Larson in Charleston, a team that wants to play very fast. And not only the last 2 years have they played fast at Charleston, but look at Pat Kelsey even at Winthrop. His last 6 seasons at Winthrop, top 50 at tempo every single year. They want to get up and down. They want to run fast. They want to gun threes. The San Diego State team, the 7th best three-point defense in the country. They're not going to allow you to get out. They're not a team that plays fast. And the thing is, they're not going to let you run on them. So I think this is a sucker's bet here because they're all going to want to take Charleston. They see they're 31-3 going into this tournament. It's a very, very good mid-major team in San Diego State. It's a deserved 5 seed, in my opinion. Won the Mountain West regular season, won the conference tournament. And Brian Dutcher's never won a game in the tournament. And I think this is the year that he does it. They're deep, they can shoot, they have experience, and they have a ton of size inside. So love the Aztecs in the 5-12 game there. I already bet that at -4.5. I think it's up now, maybe to 5.5 or 6. Next is my upset, which is the game directly below that one in the South region. I'm going to take Furman to upset Virginia in the 4-13 game. Virginia's offense, I mean, they've been abysmal. I mean, they're lucky if they can score 65 some nights. And their last 8 games or so, they've only hit that number. So their offense is terrible. Ben Vanderplas, who started a good chunk of games for them, he comes over from Ohio to do his COVID year, which, funny enough, when Ohio beat Virginia in the tournament a couple years ago, Ben Vanderplas was on that team with Jason Preston, and they got drafted by the Clippers. He comes over there, can stretch the floor, can shoot a little bit. He broke his right hand, and he's done for the year. He's not going to play. But this offense, I'm telling you, it is horrible. They don't really have anybody that can beat you off the dribble. Now, what you have to do is you have to watch them shooting threes and off these flare screens, because I watched them play Duke, and although Duke got lucky because they were missing, they got killed giving up open looks on some flare screens. Armand Franklin can shoot a little bit. T.Hay Clark can shoot a little bit. The freshman Isaac McNeely's been really good shooting threes, but it's all about defense with Virginia. This Furman team is going to spread you out. Jalen Slauson in the middle. Mike Bothwell is a really good scorer on the outside. They're going to play 5 out. They're going to spread you out. Now that they don't have Ben Vanderplas, Hayden Chedrick, the big 7-footer, is going to have to come out on the perimeter, not be by the rim. I think Furman can definitely beat them here. They can score, and Virginia can. So if they can make some shots early, maybe build themselves a little bit of a lead, get a couple stops, I think this is a really good spot for the Paladins. And then also staying in the same region here, a 6-11 game. I really like Creighton to beat NC State. Haven't really been big on NC State all year. They had some success early in the season, sure, but this Creighton team, I think, is going to turn it on, show everybody why they were a consensus top 10 team, why they were kind of a favorite. I mean, their numbers dropped from like 90-1 to 20 or 25-1 to win the championship. They're thin, like we've talked about, because we talked about it a bunch with Villanova. They really only play 5 guys, but it's a damn good 5. Trey Alexander, their best perimeter defender, is going to be matched up with Terquavian Smith. Averages a bunch of points for them. He only shoots 37% from the field, though, about that. And in the last month, he's only hit that number once when he had a huge game against Virginia Tech in the first round of the ACC tournament. So I think the defense will get after. Trey Alexander is a good matchup to put on Terquavian Smith. NC State's going to throw a press at Creighton. But in the Big East tournament, we saw Creighton play Villanova. Villanova tried to put the press on. They were able to break it, get some run-out threes. And if you're going to leave Baylor Shireman open, you're going to leave Paluma open, you're going to leave Nemhard open. They're going to knock them down if they're quality shots. Also, I just think inside, DJ Burns, he's a huge, big bruiser. I mean, that guy's a load inside, but to go up against the size and the length of Brian Kalkbrenner, I think it's going to be a problem as well. So I think they're going to be able to defend the rim well. They're going to be able to break that press and win. So I like Creighton. I like Furman as my upset, and I like San Diego State because I think all the casuals that are just rolling in here watching college basketball are going to love Charleston. So I think San Diego State squashes that, and I think San Diego State then beats Furman and gets to the Sweet 16, and Brian Dutcher gets to the second weekend for the first time in his career at San Diego State.
I have that exact same thing as well. I love that. I think, credit to Charleston. They've had a great year. They were ranked at 1.2, but this San Diego State team's really good. Now they struggle on offense too a little bit, but their defense is incredible. I love that. I think the Furman upset might be my favorite upset because it's the one that I think people are talking about of like the big upsets the least. And that's something that we talked about as soon as the brackets came out. We were watching it together. Yeah, I love it. And Creighton too. I think they're a great team. So all right, my plays. I'm gonna save my upset for last, but this one's very, very interesting. An 8-9 matchup, Memphis versus FAU. First of all, a brutal draw for the mid-major. First of all, and also shout out to the Mid-Major Madness on Twitter. Go follow them if you haven't seen them. They're a great account. All things mid-majors, and they were very upset about this, and I am too, because FAU was a great team all year. They were ranked at one point. And Memphis, we know Memphis very well in the American. They are obviously the American tournament champions. Now they got the automatic bid over Houston, though obviously Marcus Sasser was hurt. But FAU is the CUSA winner. I'm really excited to see Kendrick Davis in the tournament. I think that's going to be awesome to see. DeAndre Williams, senior citizen getting a chance. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. But he is 26. And so is Memphis and Ken Palm on offense, and FAU is 32. So these are two really, really good offenses going up against each other. I think Memphis is going to win this one. I just think they're probably the better team, the more experienced team, but I am going to go Memphis, but it's going to be a great game. Second one is a battle of two high major teams in a 6-11 matchup, Kentucky versus Providence. I think this is sneakily going to be a very, very good game. Kentucky obviously coming off a loss to Vanderbilt in the SEC quarterfinals. Providence coming off a loss in the Big East quarterfinals to UConn. This is also two really, really great offenses. Providence is 16th, Kentucky's 14th. Kentucky's second in offensive rebounding in the country. Providence is 16th. So their strengths match up to each other very well. It's going to be a really, really interesting game. There's also rumors about Ed Cooley maybe going to Georgetown. So maybe this could be his last game as head coach of Providence, though I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see. It's going to be a very, very interesting game. You don't often see great high major matchups like this in the tournament. Maybe one a year. This is definitely the best one this year in the first round, and I'm very excited to see that. And listen, you mentioned some 5-12 matchups. Everybody's a sucker for 5-12 matchups. And, Charleston, don't love them against San Diego State. Who are some of the other ones here? St. Mary's and VCU, I think, is going to be a great one. But I do think when two teams play a similar style, I think the more talented team will win. And I think that's St. Mary's, though they do play a little bit slower than VCU does. I do think Oral Roberts is going to beat Duke. So, haha on that, but we'll see. I don't know what that was. But the last one, the other ACC team that's a 5 seed, I think is going down. I think Drake, it's a very popular upset pick. I know I'm not groundbreaking anything here, but this Drake team's a really, really experienced team. And ironically, their best player is a sophomore, 6'7" point guard, Tucker DeVry. He is phenomenal. And I think it's going to match up well because Miami is some of the best guard play in the country. They have Jordan Miller, also a 6'7" point guard, Isaiah Wong, Nigel Pack. They're a great team. Jim Larinagas had these guys humming all year. I do think they might be a little bit overrated, though. And they had a great year in the ACC. Though it was a down year in the ACC. I don't know if they're going to have what it takes to go past a very experienced Drake team that kind of, ran through their conference. So I'm going to go with Drake here. I'm going to go with the Bulldogs. I think that's other than Furman, my favorite upset pick. I do also have Oral Roberts, like I mentioned. And I also have on the same matchup of the bracket going into the next round, I do have Kent State beating Indiana as well. I think that'll be a good one. And also one more quick game I wanted to mention, Texas A&M and Penn State, another high major matchup like we mentioned. I think that's going to be a phenomenal game. Obviously Penn State coming off a very close loss in the Big Ten championship, Texas A&M coming off a blow-off loss in the SEC championship. Two great teams that I think are going to make for an exciting matchup. All right. Final Four and championship time. I will let you take the floor again, sir. Who you got?
Okay, so hate to be a little chalky here. This West region's a gauntlet. Like I had my entire bracket filled out, like except for that part, and then I had to finish it because I'm looking at this in my head just in a pretzel. It's unbelievably good. There's so many good teams in that bracket.
Their top 5 seeds are all in the top 11 of KenPom.
It's great. I mean, I mean, even TCU is a 6. St. Mary's is a 5. Iona is a 13. VCU is a 12. Like Arkansas and Illinois coming out of the first round, like it's one of the best regions I've ever seen, maybe the best region I've ever seen. It's absolutely incredible, the quality of teams here. My Final Four, though, I'm gonna go out of the South. I'm gonna go with Alabama. I don't really know who in this bracket is going to be able to stop them. I think they would beat Arizona, and they would beat them badly if they had to play them.
Who do you have them beat in the Elite Eight?
I have them beating Arizona, and I think they would win that game pretty handedly. Coming out of the Midwest, I have Houston. Coming out of the West, I have Kansas, which I know you're like, oh, what are you doing? You have 3 number 1 seeds. What the hell? It's Kansas or Gonzaga. It came down to it was so hard for me to pick because I think this could make the argument looks like it's a very, very good draw for Gonzaga having to play against a short-handed UCLA team without Jalen Clark, and they've been playing as well as anybody right now. So it was very, very tough between Kansas or Gonzaga for me to make the Final Four, but I ended up going with Kansas. And out of the East, I am going with the Duke Blue Devils. Nobody is playing better than them right now. You can make the argument. They are scorching hot, and they are in the weakest region. And Purdue is the one who I think could get knocked out by Memphis, and I think that they will. Marquette is the 2. Kansas State is the 3, and Tennessee is the 4. It is as good of a draw as you could have asked for if you're a Duke fan. And I think they're going to go all the way to the Final Four. The East region goes through Madison Square Garden. You know they will fill that place up with Duke fans if they were to play there. So Duke is a 5 seed, is my number 1 seed that is not My one team that's not a number one seed that's going to make the Final Four. And then do you want me to just give my champion right
Yeah,
now?
go for it. Go for it.
Okay. I have, in my opinion, the two best teams all year. I think we'll get a rematch of Alabama versus Houston, and in their hometown, Kelvin Sampson, the Cougars cut the Nets down. I have a future on them plus 850 to win the title that I placed preseason that I love and still love, and the numbers down. I think the 5 or 6 to 1. I think they can certainly make it out of their region. I have them beating Texas in the Elite Eight, which would be a terrific game of two teams from that state. But I think Houston will ultimately cut the Nets down in their hometown and get Kelvin Sampson that ring. And and that will then solidify him as one of the top coaches, if not the top coach in the sport right now.
Yeah. No, that would be an incredible final. Quick note, Houston is plus 550. I do know that. And that San Diego State game, minus 5.5. They are right now. So just those two quick notes. All right. Here's mine. I'll say the Elite Eight matchups too, just because. I have Bama over Creighton to go to the Final Four. Do Creighton making the Elite Eight? This one's pretty interesting. I have Marquette going to the Final Four in the East region over Memphis. I do think Memphis is going to go to the Elite Eight. Then again, I also have Oral Roberts going to the Sweet 16. So there is that. In the Midwest region, I also have Houston over Texas. Honestly, that game gave me a lot of trouble because I think the guard play is just going to be incredible there. But ultimately, I just think that the rebounding margin for Houston's going to get them there, and their defense obviously too. And then in the West region, I have UConn over UCLA to go to the Final Four. I think this UConn team is a really, really good one. In fact, I think they're so good that I think they are going to win the national championship over the Alabama Crimson Tide. That Houston UConn game also gave me fits because, if there's one team that I think can match Houston's rebounding, other than like Kentucky who's on the complete other side of the bracket, it's UConn. It's UConn. They got guys, obviously Adam Sanogo being the guy, but doing that. And then, UConn and Bama already played this year. UConn won the first matchup. I think they would win again. And I'm going with the Huskies to win this one in Houston, beating Alabama. Yeah, and that's a bracket. So I only have 2 number ones. I know you have 3 number ones, although I do also have a number 2 and a number 4 that's in the top 4 of KenPom. So I don't really know how much different that is. But I think this UConn team's really, really similar path to get here to the Michigan 2013 team. At one point, they were the number 1 team in the country. I believe in like early conference play. I want to say January. They fell off a little bit, started creeping their way back. Not many people noticed. And then they were a 4 seed. They played Kansas in the regional, in the the Sweet 16, upset them, got to the Final Four, made the national championship, and ultimately lost to a great Louisville team. But I think this UConn team goes all the way. I think it's a very similar path. And I'm going to go with the Huskies. And that's a bracket. That was probably one of the best 2 hours I've had the entire year. And that I will have the entire year because there's nothing better than filling out a blank bracket.
I like what you got there. Here's my thing about UConn. I really like what they have, but I think if you're telling me they're going to go up against Kansas, I think DeJuan Harris would give Christian Newton fits in a game like that, and with the wings that Kansas has, I would take them over. I mean, here's another thing, Kyle. Here's what pushed me over the top to get Kansas into the Final Four. I can't really bet against Bill Self, especially when I see UConn in the Sweet 16, and you're telling me Bill Self or Danny Hurley, who just said last week, "Oh, we own the Garden." He's never won a game in the tournament. No regular seasons in the Big East. No conference tournament championships in the Big East. And then you look at his 2 years he's made the tournament with UConn. They lose to New Mexico State last year, and Teddy Buckets almost dropped 40 on him. And then the year before, he lost to Mark Turgeon. That's the thing. I love the talent they have. I love the talent that these guys have, but he's never won a game in the tournament. I'm supposed to say he's going to win it all?
I get it.
I don't know about that.
I believed in them, since obviously early on in the season, they went undefeated through the first 12 games. So it's not hard to say that, I believed in them going on. But I just saw a team that looked like a championship team. And I know there's a few other teams like that. Bama's like that. Houston's like that. Kansas is like that. Purdue has looked like that. I don't think they will. I think Memphis is a great matchup for them. I think Purdue's a great matchup for Memphis, and I think Memphis is end up going to win that game. But there's been a lot of great teams this year. I think UConn is just among them, and I've been high on them all year, and I was hoping for a great matchup leading up, and they do have an extremely tough bracket, but I do think they match up pretty well against a lot of these teams, especially against UCLA without Jalen Clark too. That's a huge loss. I think Sonogo is going to give Jaime Jaquez some problems if they end up playing in that matchup. I do also think Jaime Jaquez is going to give Sonogo some matchups problems there too, because he's a phenomenal player. But yeah, I mean, I really believe in this UConn team. But if it wasn't going to be UConn, it was going to be Houston over Bama, regardless. Houston team's great, and I very much struggle picking UConn over them. But I think we both have some pretty solid winners here, and we both have Bama in the final. So
yeah, but Houston, they've been my pick all year. I even said like preseason a bunch of times, like if you'd have put a gun to my head, that was, and you asked me who the champion would be, I would say for sure.
Another reason for me picking UConn. Another reason for me picking UConn too, and that's not the sole reason. I do believe that they will win, but I think part of like a strategy for winning like bracket pools and leagues and stuff might be to just like pick slightly different than other people.
Oh, 100%.
Because a lot of people are going to be on Houston. A lot of people are going to be on Alabama, Kansas, Purdue, probably even like UCLA too. I don't know. I think that's a little bit of a different pick, and I think they're a very, very capable team of winning. So that's also part of the strategy too, if you're still debating on who you want to win.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I like my bracket, but at the same time, like I just hate when it's chalk like that.
I do too.
I don't like it because it's never going to go that way. Here's the thing: like I was talking to one of your roommates, and he was like, "Yeah, I know nothing about college basketball, and I picked a bracket, and I hit I like won a league or like was very close. Like that's the beauty of it.
He got 3 out of the final 4 teams last year.
Yeah, it's just fun to fill it out. Like me, who like just watches this stuff religiously, wrecks his sleep schedule to stay up and watch the Mountain West. You might pick better than me, and that's what's so fun about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 1 in 9 billion chance that you'll get the whole thing right. Like that's what the beauty of it is. Yep. I do have Drake going to the Sweet 16 though, because I do think here's the thing to monitor. Norchad Omier for Miami left the Miami Duke game in the semifinals of the ACC tournament with an ankle injury. Now, Jim Larinaga said stay today. However, when they showed Miami, when they saw their name revealed in the bracket, he had like a little scooter type thing to get himself around. And Jim Larinaga also said that they're preparing to play with and without him. Now, I think Drake is a good play here either way. I think they'll have a chance to win this game either way. But if you tell me that Miami, who's not very big, is missing a monster rebounder down low in Omier, I love Drake even more.
Yeah.
I think they win the game if he doesn't play. I still think they have a chance. But if you tell me I can get Miami with no Norchad Omier, I love Drake in that game. Then with Indiana, I mean, they have a very tough draw with Kent State in their defense as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of potential upsets here. I don't know if all the dogs are going to be barking, but I do think that some will definitely come out. Another one that's just interesting to throw out, and I hate to have to say it to UConn, but that's going to be such a great game. Like you knew the committee was like, and it's going to be in Albany too. It's probably going to be a lot of Iona and UConn people there. I mean, that's must-see TV right there. Rick Pitino and Danny Hurley, and nothing. I would just think it's like so funny and awesome that Rick Pitino could potentially beat him, and then take the St. John's job, and then potentially just continue to beat up on him. Because look, regardless of what he's off the court stuff, whatever. He's a top 5 coach in the sport. He's one of the best coaches in the sport. He could take me and you on his team, and he could find 7 other guys, and we could probably beat somebody. That's just who he is. It doesn't matter. You give him anybody, Rick Pitino will coach a winner. Oh, yeah. That to me is like, I love the Furman game because I think Furman will beat Virginia, but that's a game I have circled because like that's going to be so much fun. That's one of my favorite games that I have. I have a couple games circled already. That's one of them because it's going to be one of the best of the first round.
And that's the risk with, taking seeds as you get a little bit lower is that they could lose in the first round. Then again, Virginia also did too a few years ago. And we've seen more 15-over-2s recently in the last like 10 years or so. But that's the risk you take. This is March, man. This is crazy. This is the time. And with that being said, we're going to we're gonna let the games play out, and we're gonna wrap up here. As always, thank you guys so much for your love and support, tuning in all season long. We very much appreciate it, and make sure you definitely follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Big Five Pod, especially for updates throughout this crazy transfer portal and coaching carousel. Obviously, that's just starting, so we're gonna have all that throughout the entire offseason. And also make sure you listen to our audio only versions on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and make sure you have a phenomenal time watching these games, especially on Thursday and Friday. I know we both think that these are two of the most sacred days of the year. Those are your two most sacred days of the year, probably two of my top five as well. It's just a phenomenal time. So enjoy it, be safe, have fun, watch a lot of basketball. I do hope Duke loses. I know you're wearing the sweatshirt. I know you're a huge Duke fan, but yeah, you know, when Duke loses, America wins. That's how the saying goes, and that's for a few teams too throughout sports. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in as always. Cope, let's have some fun this weekend and throughout the tournament, and we'll see you guys next week.